Hi everybody, it's Thomas here from Thomas Fitzgerald Photography, and in this video I'm going to look at editing a Sony RAW file from a A7 II camera in Skylum Software's Luminar. Okay, so I have the image loaded here. So this is a RAW file I've opened straight. This was actually shot on an A7 II using a meta-bunt adapter, and it's actually an old Canon lens. So it was a 70-200. No, actually it's a 70-300. One of the older lenses, but it actually worked perfectly fine. And as you can see, the bird was kind of moving about, and yeah, it managed to focus okay, and it actually looks quite good. So I've created my own workspace in Luminar called RAW Defaults, which is just what I called it, and that consists of a RAW develop filter, denoise, sharpening, accent AI, saturation, vibrance, and LUT mapping. Now you can of course use whatever you want, but this is kind of the basic things that I use. If we look at the image, it's quite flat, and that's mainly because it doesn't kind of have any profiles applied to it. So if you use Lightroom will apply its own color profile, but in Luminar it actually comes in fairly flat. So the first thing you want to do is kind of give it a profile. So there's a couple of ways you could go about doing this. You could kind of manually do it with curves, or what I like to do is I use the LUT mapping filter, and I've actually created my own LUT for this, which I call Quick RAW Enhance, and that is kind of the equivalent of, say, using the standard profile in Lightroom, for example. And I'll give you a link to below that so you can download that profile, that LUT file if you want. So straight up, that's immediately better. So if I look before and after, you can see that's definitely much better. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to tweak the sharpening. So if I zoom in here, it's actually not bad straight out of the box, so to speak, but I can give it a little bit of sharpening. So I'm just going to bring the sharpening up to 10. Even at that, that's much better. And as you can see, there's actually, the noise is very well controlled here. Luminar does quite a good job with Sony A7 files. I've noticed it keeps the noise quite well controlled, and they're quite sharp. Now the only issue is you may get some chromatic aberration, which you'll have to fix manually because it doesn't have any kind of automatic fixing, which is kind of a pain. But anyway, okay, so that's our basic edit done. So now let's kind of do something a bit more creative with it. So I'll start by bringing up the accent AI filter, because this is kind of a handy fix everything. So we don't want to go too far with this. I actually might just give it a bit of contrast as well. Okay, so straight up again, that looks a lot better. Maybe we'll just see how far we can take this. I think that anything over that, we're kind of going a bit too far. But that's not bad. I like that. Okay, so let's see what else we can do. I'm going to add another filter, and I am going to go with, let me see, we'll add an Orton effect. I know some people don't like this, but I like this filter. It can be a bit overused, so I like to keep the values fairly low. So we're going to give this, yeah, just around there. So again, if we turn that off, you can see it just kind of blends everything together and gives a nice little extra bit of oomph. That's the technical term, by the way, oomph. Okay, so let's see what else we can do. Let's add a bit of brilliance. So I kind of like this filter as well. It's kind of like a vibrance, but kind of on steroids. So again, you want to keep this low because too much will be overdone. Maybe around the 10 mark. That's not bad. Again, I'm just checking to see that we haven't kind of over increased the noise levels, which can happen sometimes when you're doing a lot of editing, but that all looks fine. Okay, so lastly, I think we need a bit of a vignette just to focus the attention in on the duck. So it's in essential, and we will bring this in. Feather. We don't want to do it too far. Yeah, but that looks a lot better. Okay, so let me do a quick before and after so you can see. So that's where we started off with, and that's what we ended up with. I mean, obviously you could achieve the same effect on any software, but I really do like the way Luminar works for doing things like this, and most of the work was done by the AI filter, and using the LUT mapping just to kind of give it a profile kind of helps as well. I mean, we could tweak this further if we wanted. I'm more than happy with that, so I'm going to save it. Duck 1. And I'm going to say include original resources, so that will include the image file as well, just so it doesn't lose the connection in case I move the original file by mistake. Okay, so before we do anything else, I'm going to add another layer. And this way, if I don't like what I'm doing, I can just turn the layer off and delete it. What I want to try and do now is just bring up a bit of more detail in kind of the splash area here. So we will try, let me just have a look. We'll try the details enhancer first. And we want medium details and maybe small details a bit. And I'm going to zoom in for this because, again, you can degrade the image quite quickly doing this if you're not careful. But that's actually a bit more. And that's pretty good now. That's kind of added a lot to that, just like that. So, but I don't want to kind of overly enhance the outer areas, so I'm going to add a mask to this. We click on the mask tool, and I'm going to use a radial mask. And we just do this. Okay. And then we just hit done to clear out the mask. I can try doing one other thing. I'm going to try using a Foliage Enhancer because I can bring up the greens with that. But again, you have to be very careful not to go too far with this. So, before, after. That's actually quite subtle, but that's kind of all we want. And then the other thing I'm going to do is add a Polarizing Filter. I'm going to bring this up because there's some blue in the water here as well, and I think that will add a nice kind of contrast. Okay, so if we now turn this layer off, we can see it's adding a good bit to it, but it might be a little bit too much. So what we can do is just lower the opacity of the layer to about 50%. There's before and there's after. It's quite a subtle effect, but overall I think it kind of adds to it. So I'm happy with that. So again, if we go back to our default, that's how we started off. And that's how we finished up. So if I do a half and half, you can see. And that only took me a few minutes, so. It's one of those things that you have to know when to stop yourself, because otherwise you keep going at it for ages. So I'm happy with that. So the last thing I'm going to do is save it out as an image. So we go export to image. And in this case, we will use, if you're saving it so you load into something else, I'd save it as a TIFF. But in this case, I'm going to do a JPEG for saving and using online. And I'm just going to save it down. And I'm going to do low sharpening. So if you're used to Lightroom, this is kind of equivalent to the same settings in the export module. You could of course save it full res as well, but I've already saved it as a Luminar file, so I can go back in and get it every time I need it. So now if I open this in the Finder, so there's our finished image. It's come a long way from where we started. So there we have it. That's editing a Sony RAW file in Skylum's Luminar. I hope you found this useful, and if you did, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.